Hey, welcome back to the channel, everybody. Had a coyote sighting yesterday in broad daylight, high noon. Literally, I looked at my watch and it was 12 o'clock. And I'll show you that in a minute. I was able to capture it, but it was through the screen and inside from my room. I had enough time to actually grab the camera. I always keep my camera close by these days because you never know what's going to pop out of the bushes. I mean, the other day I barely missed a huge snake slithering across the road, and I saw it all the way from my window. But by the time I grabbed the camera, he had already went into the bushes. But this coyote came in, he stopped right in front of the deck, and he walked right through the property. I was like, whoa, a coyote, that's crazy. First time I've seen one. So we're going to get into that. We're also going to get into a nurse manhunt. Yes, they are now coming after the nurses. We'll get into what that means. Also, a Monsanto Disney House of the Future. There was a Monsanto attraction at Disneyland in the 50s. We're going to get into that today because I found a double cross layout design. Also, we're going to get into Teen Vogue today that decided to chime in on the 15-minute city conspiracy stir. Why would they be chiming in on the 15-minute city and basically writing it off as a conspiracy in Teen Vogue? So we'll cover that today. I also have some energy updates for you guys. As a southern state is now considering banning leaf blowers. So you have to tune in to find out what state that is later in the show. And New York is sinking, is what they're telling us, probably because of all the sin going on there. And then a very cryptic story about a Utah mom who killed her husband by dosing him with fentanyl. Put it right in his drink. Hello, hubby, here's a drink for you. Your hard day at work to celebrate. And it was the drink of death. So we're going to take a look at that as well. Really weird story. I do not understand greedy people. I just don't get it. I think greed is a demon. I think, there have been times in my life where I thought I wanted it all. And now I'm in my little tiny cabin out here in the woods, and I'm completely happy. I don't want $1 million. I don't want a bunch of money. I'm happy right where I'm at, and I don't understand people who will kill somebody for a couple $1 million. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. But apparently there are people like that out there, and hope you don't run into those people because they will make your life a living hell. Now, welcome, everybody, and let's get into this coyote sighting. This is crazy, you guys. This is crazy. Let's see here. Here it is. Let's play this. Now, I got this zoomed in because you can barely see him, but it's definitely a coyote.
Coyote just ran through. Supposed to shoot those.
Let's play his back here so you guys can see this. Now, focus on this horizon because that's about the only place that you can really see them. I'll try to zoom it in a little bit.
That is a coyote. Whoa.
There he is right there. Do you see him pop out right there? Ran right through the property. Now, he came out from this direction. He crossed the county road and ran right through. It was crazy. I couldn't believe it.
Coyote just ran through. That is a coyote. Whoa.
Sorry for the screen.
Coyote just ran through.
Now, I probably need to let my neighbors know the coyotes are coming through here. They actually are a little bit more aggressive about wildlife, and they'll probably end up, hunting these coyotes and get them out of here. Because what they do is they scare off all the game animals like the deer and different animals. So they'll shoot those coyotes on sight. I'm not sure what the rules are here out in Arkansas, but coyotes are a big no-no out in these areas. And when they're seen, they're pushed out, so to speak. So what else do we have going on? Well, I was going to tell you that I think probably that poop that we saw yesterday when I showed you guys the scat that I found on the property, I think a couple of you asked if there were coyotes, and maybe that was coyote scat. It's weird because I live on a wildlife highway. Every day I see something different, and it's crazy. It's starting to feel like Noah's Ark every single day with all these animals running by the property. So there's something special about this place. I didn't know that when I got the place, but apparently there's something special about it. And so that's what's going on now. The coyotes will go after chickens. Anyone who has chicken coops, they'll break in. They can literally break through almost anything and eat all your chickens in one night. So you got to get rid of the coyotes in your area. Now, got a lot to cover today. We're going to get into some of these headlines. And the controllers basically needed all the nurses they could get during the pandemic. We all know that this was the case. And they were willing to even take the fake ones. Now, why would they do that? Because they needed as many nurses as possible to get as many Pokemon stickers on people's arms as possible. That was their goal. We all know it. The cat's out of the bag. And they may have even looked the other way while they knew that there were these fake nurses. And worst case scenario, this whole thing could have been some kind of dragnet. Because the nurses went from hero and now they're zero. Now, almost all nurses who pulled up the sleeve are now getting huge pay cuts down to pre-pandemic levels. And now the authorities are coming after the very nurses that they use to get as many stickers in as many people as possible. They're calling them bogus nurses with fake diplomas, and they are coming. Now, we had covered this probably about 2 months ago. We started talking about this because there were some grumblings about whatever was going on with this. It says here, in spring 2019, a curious piece of information landed at the FBI's Baltimore field office. An informant said that for about $17,000, a recruiter in nearby Laurel, Maryland, had offered to provide a diploma and a fake transcript from a Florida nursing school, along with tutoring for the nurse licensing exam without the need to actually take courses or receive clinical training. That tip has mushroomed into an ongoing search for bogus nurses that spans all 50 states, D.C., Canada, and parts of the Caribbean. It has resulted in the indictments of 25 people on wire fraud charges and continued investigation of additional schools that may be offering the same fraudulent arrangement. 2,800 people who bought credentials without attending classes from 3 unaccredited schools passed the National Council licensure examination and presumably have used that shortcut to find work or better jobs in the healthcare industry. Wow. So, are some of these nurses, did they have patients in their care who maybe died during the pandemic? This is the question. So, this is what happens when the controllers need bodies, right? Now, let's switch gears here and talk about Monsanto. Remember we covered Monsanto's 666 House of the Future in Disneyland. Now, why do I call it the 666 House of the Future? Well, because it opened on 666, June 12th, 1957, or 666. Now, the home featured microwave technology. Yes, the very microwaves most people have in their kitchens right now. Watch this.
First look, a family food center to store atomically irradiated food.
As you can tell,
Unbelievable. So they literally called it atomically radiated food, and that was like normal in 1957. Now, of course, the number 57 also means 5G, because 7 is the fifth letter, or G is the fifth letter, seventh letter of the alphabet, sorry. And so, of course, they knew exactly what the future was going to hold. This is how much power these people have. Most of the house of tomorrow, most of the technology that was in the house actually ended up coming to fruition. It actually ended up happening. They even show what appears to be a blink camera system where this guy goes over to the wall. Here, let's go here. Let me show you guys this. This is unbelievable. Can't even believe this. So let's fast forward to this part. Listen to this.
Yes, this kitchen almost gets dinner itself, but convenience and efficiency. How do we cook? The range is different too. A microwave range that rises out of the counter.
The microwave range rises out of the counter. It has climate control. And then this guy goes over to the wall and there's actually a camera. Security camera. And he can talk to people.
We saw on the dressing table, but with the added attraction of a closed-circuit television receiver.
So, just like in Star Trek where they had the flip phones, all this technology is already known about. Now, what does this mean? Well, it means that the enemy runs all this. This is why there's been an explosion in technology. Because the enemy knows his time is short. So all this technology that makes our life more quote-unquote convenient, you need to look out for. Now, if there was ever any indication that Monsanto was not a good company, I started getting into some research on it today. And we all know the stories of Monsanto. We all know it. But until you actually read the Wikipedia article on it and you see the long track record of destroying our health through their products and them still being in business. I mean, they've been purchased and rearranged a bunch of times, but essentially the idea behind Monsanto is still going strong with these technologies that are not fully tested, plastics, PCBs, Roundup, and all these things. And when you see it all in sum total, you realize that it's evil. I mean, there's no other conclusion that you can come to other than Monsanto is evil. And heck, I even had discovered that the very river that I was fishing out of, remember I caught those big, beautiful striper and I ate them? Well, I had just discovered that the Housatonic River, where I was fishing out of in Connecticut, was indeed contaminated heavily with PCBs. Now, it was much further upstream, and by the time it got down below that dam, it wasn't as much, but this stuff builds up in your body. Now, of course, that was only a couple fish that I ate, but maybe that's why God was making it so hard for me to catch those fish. Now, there is currently some kind of cleanup project going on. They're called a Superfund site. And it's anywhere where these companies were dumping these PCBs into river systems and they're going in and dredging up the sediment. But even at this point, companies like General Electric, which was the one that dumped into the Housatonic River for like 45 years, their solutions that they come up with are still reveal that they're evil. They want to actually dump all this into a landfill next to the river, as if that's going to help the problem. And what do you do with this stuff? Or how do you get rid of it? Well, they say if you incinerate it at 1,000 degrees Celsius, that it will get rid of it. But they don't want to spend the money to do that because you're talking about millions and millions of tons of sediment coming out of these rivers. And it's being trucked across the country and put on trains. PCBs are nasty stuff. They're comparable to dioxins. They never leave the environment. They take centuries to break down. They cause cancer. They cause liver failure. They cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And we're supposed to trust these scientists, the very ones that have been making us sick over and over and over again. Every generation, they come out with a new thing to make us sick. Agent Orange. What else did they make? I can't even list them all. But if you want to do a deep dive on Monsanto, just pull up the Wikipedia page on it, and you'll see an entire history of all the things that they made that made us sick. So, this started a long time ago. The 1950s and before. The company was founded at the turn of the last century, you guys. Now, why are we talking a little bit more about Monsanto today? Well, this is the home of tomorrow. And if you look here, there's a particular floor plan called the mansion. And the original plan is shaped like a cross. But when you get the mansion, it's a double cross. Now, what is up with the double cross in this floor plan? Well, this is a satanic cross. Now, I fully understand that this is also a Catholic symbol. And some people were upset at me because we found the same double cross in the movie or the TV series From. And it was in the movie cover poster or series covers poster. And the town was actually shaped like this, like the double cross. And I called it out. People were like, that's not a bad symbol. That's the Catholic symbol. That's a holy symbol. Well, it's also a satanic symbol. It's called a double cross. And this particular symbol is actually on a brand of liquor as well. This is their symbol. We covered it. Do you think their intention is that it's a holy symbol, or is their intention the negative symbol? I think given the fact that it opened on 6/6/6, 1957, I think we have our answer. Now, look at this thing. This is crazy. So, everything is centered around this tiny footprint. And this is what they boast about this. Let's try to read this. It says, 2 or more cores connected by bridges make any size home. Here, there's a 2,500 square foot home of an area supported on 512 square feet of foundation. So the foundation is built at the core, and then the rest of it is cantilevered off the edges of the core, is the way these things are built or were built. And so they're boasting this tiny footprint. What does that remind you of? Reminds you of the carbon footprint, doesn't it? And now they want to measure every person's footprint on this planet based on how much carbon you use. Now, the irony of all this is that these houses were made entirely of plastic. And of course, plastic comes from oil products, the biggest carbon footprint of them all. In fact, most oil is used for plastics, not to put in your car to drive your car. Wow. Now, let me check in with you guys and we'll keep going with this, because this cross, the Leviathan cross, actually showed up in a brand new movie that I just decoded. The movie is called Clock. The bottom of the symbol of this Leviathan cross is an Ouroboros. But it's also the metaverse symbol. Isn't it? The owl eyes. It's just cocked sideways, isn't it? What is this about? Well, what is the movie about? Well, let's take a look here. This is the movie Clock. I'm going to show you some clips from that. It's Hulu. Look at the syringe pointing down from the, what do they call this thing? I always forget what they call this for children. I always forget. Anyway, it's got sea creatures all around it. It's got snails, turtles, blue-blooded creatures, fish, coral, and a syringe. Because this has always been about the blue blood, hasn't it? And injecting humanity with it. Now, the story centers around a woman named Ella. Of course, it has to be Ella, right? Because El is the father, La is female in Spanish, or the feminine. So that name has been used throughout many of these decodes that we've done in many of these films. And the woman who stars in the film, Diana Agron, almost looks like dragon, doesn't it? I get dragon when I see this. Diana Agron is dragon. D. Agron, dragon. And she's basically a woman who goes through most of her 20s and 30s not wanting to have children. But because she's Jewish, her family puts all this pressure on her, and they start bringing up the Costa Hall, we'll call it. Scramble those letters if you don't know what I'm saying. And they're like, you have to do this. It's your birthright. You have to have children. You have to procreate to preserve the bloodlines. But she doesn't want to. Her biological clock is broken. And the whole movie centers around that theme, that her clock is broken and she needs to fix it. So you hear lots of ticking clocks in the movie. And so what does she do? She starts caving into the pressure. And she decides she's going to go to a treatment center, an occult treatment center, in which they start giving her injections. And soon after, she starts hallucinating spiders, which probably represents spider venom. So you have things injecting you with spider venom. She then gets an implant after undergoing this bizarre fear ritual, almost like a baptismal fear ritual. They put her in this egg-like object. You're going to see all that in a second here, with water in it, like she's born again into the serpent by way of the venom. It's really unbelievable, all the symbolism that we've already covered that's being repeated again in this brand new movie called Clock. Let's watch a little bit of this here.
Implant can cause some discomfort with insertion, so Valium.
She looks in and she doesn't see the pills of Valium. She sees a dead spider, because it's all about the implanting of the spider. It's all about connecting her with the blue blood venom of the spider. Spiders are hemocyanin-based creatures. They have blue blood, copper-based blood.
The tank is systematic desensitization. There's really nothing to be scared of.
Then they bring her into the tank, they call it, which is basically a giant egg. Reminds me of the whole Lady Gaga egg ritual where she comes out of the egg. And there it is right there. It's basically a baptismal ritual because she's suspended in water, desensitized, and she's pumped up with all these images of fear, which then cause her to be reborn into the fear, right? This is all about the dark water tanks. We've covered a lot of this. We have several decodes on the dark water towers and the dark tanks. We covered the woman named Lamb who was found in a dark water tank. We covered a Doctor Who episode about people in water tanks. We covered the Spider-Man, right? Spider Venom, the Venom movie, where he's flying through the water tanks, the dark water towers.
If it ever gets to be too much, you just press that button right there to release the hatch. Get in and close.
So this is the creepy occult foundation that does this experiment on her to try to bring back her desire to become pregnant. And their logo is the Metaverse logo. Now, the other thing that she starts to hallucinate is her grandmother from the Holocaust. and she's this giant slender woman, like a slender man, but it's a slender woman. She's really creepy, so I would not recommend watching this movie. Lots and lots of jump scares, lots of Kabbalistic kinds of themes, sorcery, and all that kind of stuff. Now, I have my armor on, so God tells me to watch these things and report on them so that you know what's going on, so that you know that this stuff is real. People can place curses on you, and there's this whole, let's call it a religious aspect to this, of a certain religion, and they're basically of their father, the devil. And so, let's keep watching here. So first, the hallucinations inside the tank start out good. It's like roses and pregnancy, and then you get all these weird stuff. I'm not going to show that to you, but needless to say, this is really crazy. The spider is the venom that will change the womb. It's the blue blood mixed with the red blood. She keeps seeing spider hallucinations crawling on the womb.
Al?
Oh my God. Sean.
Now, in this particular instance, this is her friend, and she basically, her job is to build like nursery. She does like design and paint. She's like an interior designer, I think is what her job is. But she starts going crazy after she goes to this institute because of the drugs that they're giving her, and because of the injections, and because of her dark rebirth into darkness in that tank. And so at that point, she starts just losing her mind, and she wants to have a baby now, but it's a really warped version of it. It's dark and warped. It's not what a normal mother experiences when she wants to have a child. It becomes like obsessive and gross. And so she's hallucinating the spider crawling on her friend's stomach, her pregnant stomach. It's unbelievable. And she thinks she has to kill the spider, so she grabs a book and she's about to smash the spider, but which would, of course, hurt the baby, right?
I got you.
What?
Just stay still.
Just stay still. So, that is from the movie Clock. Okay? Now, let's get into some more of these headlines. Crazy stuff, you guys. Crazy stuff. Good morning. Say good morning to you guys real quick before we continue on here. Thanks, Lens of Love. Long gone are rom-coms of the 90s. We live in a darkened realm reality, constant negative bombardment. Yes. And a lot of people don't even realize that when they're watching these movies that it's a negative bombardment. They don't even get it. They're just programmed by it. And that's the end of it. All right. Let's get into some, I think some energy updates. Let's see here. Oh yes, energy updates next up. Well, would you ever thought that a southern state would consider going electric? Well, we did talk about that when all this started in California and New York, didn't we? And I told you that they first start on the coasts and then the rest of the states follow suit after the people have been desensitized to it. And that's exactly what's happening right now. North Carolina is the next state now considering banning gas leaf blowers. Unbelievable. And it starts with the leaf blowers, because remember, we surmised that they start with something annoying that everybody hates, and that's their like cracking the door, so that they can then apply that rule to everything else. And before you know it, you don't even know how it started, but next thing you know, you can't pull your small engine gas, you can't start your small engine gas tank anymore because it's now illegal. But it started with a gas leaf blower. So, you know, it's funny because sometimes people on channel get frustrated with the process of decoding all this stuff, and they criticize us for not finding this stuff before it happens. But they don't even realize that if you just look at everything that we've been covering, it's all stuff that did happen. It's just that I don't often call it out. But we go back to a lot of shows from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and everything that we said was going to happen is now happening. This is one such example. The Electric Kingdom, we've been talking about this. I've been telling you guys it's coming, that there's a sustained effort. It's not going to change if Trump gets elected. You might think it is, but it won't. They're still coming after gas, natural gas, propane. They want everything electric. So this is our future. So North Carolina, let's read about this. One of the signature sounds of spring in North Carolina could soon be the next front line of the climate change revolution. Leaf blowers, those noisy machines that seem to echo across suburban neighborhoods as soon as the weather warms up and the lawns come alive, have long been derided for their jet engine-like sounds and the dust and pollen they kick up. See how they're demonizing the leaf blower. Now, I'm not saying gas-powered leaf blowers are the greatest. What I'm telling you is they're weaponizing this. They're manipulating your mind by first showing you a negative and then showing a solution that almost everybody would agree with, because nobody loves a leaf blower, right? A new push to ban gas-powered leaf blowers is gaining momentum in many parts of the country. Here's why the bans are growing and what it could mean for North Carolina. So they're coming for North Carolina. Wow. Now, if you live in North Carolina, even if you hate leaf blowers, you need to stand against this. This is how they got the crack in the door in California. And now all small gasoline engines are banned in California. Soon, that will also include generators. And it doesn't matter if you live in the country or up in the mountains or the foothills, you won't be able to start your generator anymore at some point. So you need to stand up now against this. We are not the problem. A leaf blower is not the problem. The problem falls with the mass polluters, which is the corporations, like how we opened the show today, Monsanto. There are so many PCBs flowing in and around most of the rivers of America, you can't even eat a fish out of it anymore. Unless you know for a fact there was no plant above you in the watershed that could have dropped this stuff into it. Unbelievable. Now, what else do we know? What else is going on here? What is the end game? Well, the end game is to economically and physically enslave humanity. How are they going to do that? By inflating energy costs that will disproportionately affect the low and middle class. Because for us, the energy costs represent a much larger percentage of our income, doesn't it? So, let me give you an example. When I lived in Connecticut, the gas bill started out at about $100-something a month. By the time I left, it went up to like $500 a month. That was a significant part of my income and the income of the household. And so that became a problem. You see how that changes a person's ability to keep their head above water if you're middle or lower class? And it disproportionately affects people who are lower middle class because it's so much larger of a part of your income. So fight this with everything you have. Hold your conservative politicians accountable. Tell your friends and family. Don't give in to the necessary evil. Don't say, oh, well, at least this person's a Republican and we're going to get everything else we want. Maybe it's not a big deal to ban gas engines. Do not give in to that. That's what they want you to do. That's the right-left paradigm and how it works. Look at this. Our worst suspicions have been confirmed. Net zero will make us poor. They're starting to wake up in England. They already know that this is happening. Okay. After much fanfare following the Skidmore review at the start of the year, government ministers seem to have gone rather quiet on that claim. The idea of net zero making us money. At the same time, pictures emerging of just how much the government's legally binding commitment to reach net zero by 2050 may actually cost. The latest revelation That's subsidizing the government's hydrogen plans could itself involve an extra 120 pounds added to our annual bills will cause consternation among many homeowners, not least because those plans do not now seem to involve much likelihood of installing hydrogen boilers in homes. So, net zero is going to cost the people in England a bunch of money, and we have our version of net zero, don't we? They're not calling it that, but now this story interests me because this came out in Teen Vogue. What are 15-minute cities and why are conspiracy theorists worried about them? Because they're like prisons? Let's read about what they're saying here. Look at this. 15-minute cities, welcome to the real Hunger Games. Let's read this. Imagine waking up in your apartment, noticing you need a carton of eggs or a container of milk, and heading to the grocery store on foot or by bike because it doesn't really matter. Either way, it will take you 15 minutes or less to reach your destination. You don't have to worry too much about setting an early alarm for work or school because those places, too, can be reached in 15 minutes. So they're making it sound like it's a great thing, but then the concept is not necessarily new, but the marketability and dissemination of it are. Paris mayor Anne Hidalgo championed the effort in her 2020 re-election campaign. Notice the timing of this, right? Because during the pandemic, this would have been great, right? We're locked down. Everything should be 15 minutes away. It's close, right? You see the agenda now? Everything is coordinated in time. It almost feels like an artificial intelligence is running the world because these events are all happening in unison with one another. And they're coordinated, carefully coordinated and launched. People say, why? They're giving all these adulations to Trump for ending the Gulf War, right? Ending the war in the Middle East. But why did he do that? Because they knew that COVID was coming. They had to switch gears. You can't do two things at the same time. Think of the timing of it. Let's wrap this project up. We're starting a new one. This is how these people think. So, let's keep reading here. So this whole thing is talking about how these 15-minute cities would work. So it's just basically a whole article on the 15-minute city. Look at this. Exactly what we just said. The COVID-19 pandemic was a flashpoint in the United States for what cities could be like without cars. In the first 2 months of the pandemic, miles traveled in a vehicle decreased in some U.S. cities by as much as 88%. It sort of opened our eyes when cars stopped driving briefly during initial lockdowns in the U.S. How much space do we give to cars? What can we do with that space? See this? So they get rid of our gas cars, and then they say, we can't produce enough electricity to run your electric cars. Screw it. We don't need cars anyway. We'll just make a bunch of 15-minute cities. Wow. So, what do climate activists think about 15 minutes? So they're just basically, all these articles are how great 15-minute cities are, right? Gosh, do they even get to the conspiracy theories? Here, let's read it right here. What are the conspiracy theorists pushing misinformation about the 15-minute city? Wow. Okay. In the UK, they argue that the movement is a way to force people to stay in a certain area. Which is what the entire first part of this article was talking about. How are you supposed to leave your area if you don't have a car? And what if there's rules? If you don't get a pokey jab, then you can't get on the train to go to the next city. Right? So that would force people to stay in a certain area. So unless you follow their rules, you're stuck. Let's keep reading here. Rid them of their physical autonomy and fine them if they try to leave their mandated zone. It's a far leap from how experts define the 15-minute cities model, but it's caught on among far-right protesters. See, there's the label, far-right protesters. I'm not a far-right protester. but I'll get lumped into these people if you protest their 15-minute cities. Wow. Oh, they're totally insane. Oh, that's what they said about a lot of other stuff in history, right? Like UFOs and all this that they're now saying are real. The professor himself has been a target of conspiracy theorists who have sent him death threats. Well, I would never threaten anyone's life. That's ridiculous. But you'll get lumped into these people if you believe what we believe. Wow. So, you wouldn't catch me within 15 minutes of a 15-minute city. Anyway, enough fun for today. Now, this next story is pretty creepy. And this is the one I wanted to show you guys. This Utah mother who killed her husband for a couple $1 million in a house. Now, anytime you put large amounts of money on the table, there's always somebody who wants to kill you for it. It's the way it works. If they think they can get away with it, they will come for it. And this is the problem with money. What does money do? Money artificially stockpiles value, doesn't it? It artificially stockpiles value where there is no value. Okay, let me give you an example. If you're a laborer, someone who has a skill, right? Let's say you install windows. Your value is only as good as the amount of windows you install, right? You can't stockpile that. In other words, someone's not going to pay you before you've installed the windows for the next 6 years, let's say. Let's just give an extreme example. They might pay you for, a few months. They might say, okay, we'll do a down payment or whatever, but you're only as good as your ability to install those windows, right? And this is how our financial system should work. No one should be able to stockpile something that isn't even real over another human being, which causes them to have power over that human being. Right? Because what happens is, as people begin to stockpile more and more of this stuff, they get to the level where they have so much stockpiled that they can now manipulate and rig the system against the people who don't have any of this stockpiled. What that does is it creates a servant class. The prime example is that there is no livable wage in America. Okay? In other words, the people with all the money have convinced all of us that they don't have to pay you a living wage. That, hey, you just better figure it out. This is what you get. You get $15 an hour, and good luck if that pays your rent and your car payment and whatever else you need money for. That's not our problem. This is just what you get, and you better show up to work because there'll be someone else standing in line who does want this job. That's not fair. That's not godly. That's not what God wants. He wants the fruits of your labor to yield you a way to make a living, doesn't he? Now, a lot of this is biblical. There's actually stuff in the Bible that curses people who underpay their employees. I can't remember the exact verse or whatever, but we had covered that at some time. But so we have a servant class in America. Yes, we do. There are people that work 40 hours a week and can't afford rent and a decent car to get back and forth to work, and all their bills and insurance and energy costs, and are taking shortcuts in life, like turning off the air conditioner when it's 102 outside, or they're rolling without insurance, which is almost impossible these days because they won't let you register your car, and it's a matter of time before you get pulled over, and then your problems increase 20-fold. Let's see what happened with this woman, what she did. I mean, this is crazy. I'm just going to play this because they talk about it here.
More than a year since the death of Eric Richens. Now the family of the father of 3 is speaking out, saying they've long been suspicious of his wife, Corey.
Does Eric's family believe Corey killed him?
I mean, this is the epitome of a gold digger, but it's not just that, you guys. There are greedy men out there too.
I think the family has always felt that Corey was somehow involved in his death.
The 33-year-old real estate agent
Of course she's 33.
turned children's book author has been charged.
Then she wrote a book to capitalize on it even more. I mean, this woman had to have been possessed by a demon. Look at, there's the adrenochrome soccer ball there with a crenodrome pattern. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up on Wikipedia. Look at the actual molecular structure, and you will see the soccer ball pattern.
Charged with his murder. Police alleging she poisoned her 39-year-old husband last March with a massive dose of fentanyl. And according to court...
Unbelievable. And she put it in his drink. Here, honey, have a drink. Celebrate. And that was the last time he celebrated. Can you imagine what this guy went through? Obviously, I mean, I don't know the rest of the story, but nobody deserves to die. This looked like a decent man. He's there with his family. They got the dog there. And this greedy woman, let's just
documents,
watch.
Eric's family told investigators it may not have been the first time she'd poisoned him.
He felt like Corey was trying to kill him, and that if he did die, that she should be investigated.
So he even told people, I think my wife's trying to kill me. Wow. This is why I do not believe in life insurance policies. Not that the person is, their intent was to want to kill you, but like I said, you put a couple $1 million on the table, and guess what? There's the possibility that person could be up at night going, you know what? I'd rather be by myself. I'll take the $1 million myself.
For that.
Investigators say Eric had recently changed his will and life insurance from his wife to his sister and was looking into a divorce. Two of Eric's friends told detectives he was worried that Corey would kill him for...
Notice the theme here. Remember, we talked about stockpiling, right? And what does the Bible say? Do not store up for yourselves gold and silver where moths and rust will destroy. Is that what the verse says? Someone could look that up for us in the chat and put it in there. So when you start storing up things, someone is always going to want it, aren't they? It might not be your spouse. It could be anybody. Could be a mother. Could be whoever.
For the money, and wanted to ensure his kids were taken care of financially.
It completely took us all by shock.
Look at, okay, we got to do an investigation here on the facial expressions. This is her. This is the killer. Oh boy.
As Richens was writing this children's book...
Hold on, let's rewind it. Oh, look at the face. Zoom in on the face. Now, this is her on a local TV station talking about how she missed her husband.
Financially.
It completely took us all by shock.
As Richens...
With a straight face, even. Who would have thought a woman like this could do this to her husband?
Was writing this children's book about grief, even promoting it on local TV. Investigators were looking into the couple's troubled past.
This whole entire place will...
Look at this house. This is unbelievable. So this lady was a real estate agent. And so she was trying to get this house. And the husband was like, this looks like too... See, I would have been this guy. Because I had the similar pressure. I'm not going to go into detail, but I had similar pressure when I was younger, not to this degree, but it was always move forward, more and more and more, bigger house, bigger car. And that's not how I'm wired. I'm the good enough kind of guy. Hey, it's clean. It's mine. There's no debt attached to it. I'll settle with that. And the rest, I'll focus my life on God, right? And helping other people. But some people want more and more and more. And this woman was trying to get her husband into this house here. And he was like, no. He started to back out, and she didn't want to take no for an answer. Utah. Let's watch this here.
Will sleep up to 60 people.
60 people. Now, if you hadn't heard, Jay-Z and Beyonce just bought a house in Malibu. It was the most expensive house ever purchased in all time. It like broke the Guinness Book of World Record. And the house was valued at $300 million. Now, when you look at the house, it doesn't look like anything. It looks like an old 1980s. It just doesn't even look like anything fancy. It's not even that big. But this is what people seek after. They seek after riches.
Listing agent telling NBC News Corey is currently selling this house, purchased just a week after her husband's death. Detectives say the couple had argued.
Look at this thing. Look at the inside of it. You could do like a concert in here. Look at this. Look at the size of this house. Man.
Detectives say the couple had argued about the property, which Corey wanted to flip. The agent says this rendering shows plans for a $4 to $6 million renovation of the 10-acre estate. But police say Eric told his family he no longer wanted to buy the house because it would lose a significant amount of money. The day after Eric was found dead.
Sounds like her plan was to get the house knowing it was going to lose money and just kill her husband, and then she'll have the money to make up the difference.
Investigators say Corey reached a deal on the home, and that same day threw a party at her house where she was drinking and celebrating with friends.
The family felt right at the outset that this had to be a suspicious death.
Now with Corey behind bars, awaiting her next court hearing, the Richens family is hopeful.
Look at this poor guy, all his children without a father. Children are going to grow up. I wonder if anyone will ever tell them the truth, you know? I remember being little, and the one thing I hated was adults would never tell me the truth. They're like, you're not old enough to understand. And to this day, I go back to some of those people, and I'm like, okay, are you going to tell me? I'm 50 years old. No one will ever tell you the truth. And this is how the enemy works. He lies. He's a liar. Nothing ever gets resolved because no one ever finds out the truth about things that happen. It all gets swept under the rug.
Justice will finally bring an end to Eric's tragic story.
Aaron, investigators have also talked about text messages sent by Corey Richens on the night of her husband's death. Have you learned more about that?
Yeah, Savannah, according to the arrest warrant, the night of the alleged murder, Corey was texting one of her best friends.
So who knows? Who knows who else was involved in this? Now, they named the actual drink in here. Let's see here. Oh my gosh. She dosed him with a drink. 33. Look at her name's Richens. This doesn't even sound like a real story. I wanna be rich. Remember that song? Okay, enough of that. Corey Richens. She spiked her husband's drink. Wow. Anyway, be careful who you choose as a mate. I mean, not that this could happen to everybody, but there are weird people out there. Right? Very weird. Now, let me check in with you guys, and we'll get into New York sinking into the ocean. We're going to get into those crazy worms. Remember that story we did on the worms in Texas? They're called the hammerhead worms. Well, pull up my Facebook, and now they're in Arkansas. The hammerhead worm. Now, tomorrow, we're going to revisit the 2017 pre-pandemic comic book called Asterix and Obelisks that literally says the name coronavirus over and over again. There's even a character named Bifidus. So we're going to break that down. There's also a mention of Bacillus, which links into Monsanto, and I'll explain all that tomorrow. But let's finish up today's show with those last couple stories. Oh boy. New York sinking. Study says huge buildings, rising seas contribute to subsidence. I think the sin probably has something to do with it. Pressure from New York City's massive buildings as skyscrapers is making the city more vulnerable to sink lower into the ocean. Let's see here. 3 University of Rhode Island oceanologists and a researcher from the U.S. Geological Survey found that New York City, home to more than 8 million people, is sinking at a rate of 1 to 2 millimeters a year while sea levels rise. I don't think the sea levels are rising, but with more than 1 million buildings amassing nearly 1.7 trillion pounds, some areas in the metropolis were found to be subsiding much faster when scientists modeled the subsidence caused by the pressure that these structures exert on the earth. Wow. So, I guess we'll see what happens. Now, here's that crazy worm I wanted to show you guys. Look at this thing. Does anyone know what these are? I found them in my pool today as I was getting ready to set it up. I've never seen them before. This is in Clinton, Arkansas. And there it is, the hammerhead worm. I wonder if they're dropping these things out of the sky or something. So weird. So, this will be tomorrow's show. Look at that. 2017. Now, many of you have already heard this story, but the new part of the story that I'm going to show you is the mention of bacillus, which is a weaponized diamond-shaped bacteria that is used by Monsanto to kill weeds. That will be tomorrow's show. We'll also get into more Hydra stuff likely tomorrow as well. And let me go back into the chat and check in with you guys. Wow, right? Yes, a hammerhead worm is what they called it. Many of you who follow the channel every day will remember the story that we covered in Texas about that worm. And how they said it was taking over, some kind of plague almost. Thanks, Emily. Thanks for the kudos. Thanks, Maggie, Margaret, Yabba Dabba, Marcy. Isn't bacillus a probiotic? Probably. Let's see, is this it? Monsanto invented and sells genetically modified seeds that make a crystalline insecticidal protein from Bacillus thuringiensis. That's what we'll cover tomorrow. And look at this. Look at the spores. They're diamonds. Literal three-dimensional diamonds. Above and below, pyramidal shapes. Bipyramidal shapes. This is the foundation of the entire Monsanto technology. We're going to expose all that tomorrow with the comic Asterix and Obelisks. All right. Which, of course, an obelisk is a needle and an Asterix is the ball. So we have the ball and needle, which is the World's Fair. The world of tomorrow. The Trilon and Perisphere is the Asterix and Obelisk. Unbelievable. All right. Now, for those of you that don't know, it wasn't only Monsanto that created the home of tomorrow. It was also the Trump family. And their billboard appeared at the 1939 World's Fair, and it said the home of tomorrow, right next to the Trilon and Perisphere, the needle and the ball. Now, for someone to try to make all this up would be impossible. The dots are connecting, and they're connecting very precisely. And it's undeniable at this point. So, all right, you guys. Well, I will see you guys tomorrow. Start preparing for tomorrow's show. Much love, everybody. Take care and be safe.